back to Ground Zero Salem. As always, I am your host, Pat. So, before I get into this probably kind of lengthy update, we are listening to a band called Demon Head. This is a cassette out on Caligari Cassettes, Caligari Records. They mostly do tapes, handful of CDs. Really cool fold-out J-card with the tarot cards there. Second spin through this, I got a pretty sizable order in from Caligari. I think in a week or two, when I absorb more of that, I might go into a little thing on my favorite tape labels, not just Caligari, but Head Split, Transylvanian Tapes. Chanel covered them really well, but I might talk about a few of the ones I like from that. No Visible Scars, there's a couple of others, so just want to talk about tape labels. I think they're really cool, get stuff for cheap. They always do a nice job, especially these guys, with just how their presentation of their product. Really cool album, this Demon Head. Title of it is Thunder in the Fields. It's Caligari Records 066. It's in the player right now, but it's in a cool smoky shell. It's very, I can't put it any better than the description on the website that mentions something about early Neil Young and Judas, like the first Judas Priest record, getting in a bar brawl or something along those lines. But it it definitely sounds like the evilest 70s rock that you could possibly think of. But it's very little distortion on the guitars, kind of crooning vocals. I think it makes a pretty good companion to that Initiated record. It's less punkish and fast than that. But man, this is just great stuff. Doesn't sound like anybody directly, which is cool. Something I'm always looking for. So before I continue, a couple of things I gotta mention before I get to the meat of what this whole update's about. It's gonna be another genre wars, but I'll get to that in a minute. Big thanks to Ross Hodo once again. A few updates back when I mentioned in one of Marty's VCLTs, I got the Christian Mistress first full length and got it on CD. And liked it okay. He was like, well, I'm not really into it. You want the LP? Less than a week later, there it is on my doorstep there. Possession. And I mean, this is not like LPs used to be mastered like directly from tape or anything. Most LPs these days are mastered from a digital source, but I don't know. Spinning it on LP will be nice, you know. I do like the songs. It's just, there's something kind of dry about it, but I love that. I love the girl's voice, woman's voice, so that's cool. Give it some more spins. He sent me another In Solitude flexi, or another decibel flexi of In Solitude doing Mother of Mercy by Sam Hain. Sam Hain's definitely one of my faves, so that's cool. I was really into the second In Solitude record, The Blood, the Flesh, the Devil. Never actually heard the first one or the third one. The third one seemed like the one where everybody was like, ugh, we don't like the way they're going, but I never really checked it out, so whatever, you know. I got a couple stickers too. Got a sort of a Napalm Deathish anti-music note deal, and no sympathy for white supremacy. Those two are going right on the record player. So yeah, I hate using the term shout-out, not because I'm against the idea, but it's just kind of an overused term. I'd like to issue some accolades to some fellow tubers that I may not have mentioned before I go on. First off is Wordvert, who's a guy who commented on a couple of my early videos. For a while I didn't realize he did videos himself. Vinyl Richie made me aware of that. Shout out to him as well, because he's always mentioning me and stuff. And not to go off track, but I saw Rich's update today, and he actually bought a record because of me. And he's one of the few people that's done that, and that's always a trip to me, that somebody actually went and checked something out on my recommendation. I think Scourge of Vinyl did that because I played some Deteriorate and some other stuff, but definitely cool, especially because Rich has been, you know, into music longer than I have, and that's fucking rad if he likes old punk, and I got him into an old punk band. Anyway, Rich mentioned Wordvert, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy's commented on my stuff, and like, what a fucking amazing channel. I mean, this guy's got, it's one thing if somebody has a very wide and varied taste in music and it's all bullshit. You know, like, oh, I like Jimmy Buffett and I like whatever, you know, Trickster. No offense to people that happen to like Jimmy Buffett or fucking Trickster, I guess, but all over the map with that guy, and it's all really cool stuff, and it's a lot of stuff that you know, I remember reading about and hearing about, and haven't thought about in ages, like the Boredoms and all kinds of kind of interesting noisy stuff. But he's into metal too, tons of like old and new hip hop. He did a whole thing on Cameo. My God, I need some fucking Cameo in my life. Holy shit! At least the first couple of records. So yeah, I'll put links. Like, sub that dude. It's great. And he also just does. He lives in New York, and he does random videos of just like, you know, stuff going on the street in New York or in the subway. So big ups to that. Fucking awesome dude. Really funny. Also, I know Ross. Not Ross. I know maybe Ross has mentioned him. I know that Eric has mentioned him. Jason has mentioned him, a few people, but gotta mention Sallos 116. Into awesome stuff, like loves Gizm, loves Amoebics. He's into black metal too, but super into that, and he skates, and he's going through a program right now where he's trying to stay sober, and the YouTube thing is part of it, and I think that's really positive, and that's awesome. So definitely check his stuff out, give him feedback, sub him, try his stuff out if you like it. Definitely cool dude. Not sure where he lives, Arizona, maybe? Doesn't really matter where anybody lives. And one more, just to give back the love, because he's mentioned me and Marty and Eric and a bunch of us numerous times as Vinyl in the Van. I believe his name's Jay. I think I mentioned him briefly with the thing with the video I did with Jason, but just a chill dude who's into all kinds of hard rock and psych and garage rock, and he likes some metal and a little bit of punk and that kind of stuff there, but he's a guy that got back into record collecting after years and years and has just gone headfirst into it and has all this awesome stuff to show. I mean, like, shit like Sir Lord Baltimore and, like, all that awesome, like, kind of a little deeper than, you know, fucking Led Zeppelin or whatever kind of 70s hard rock, you know, like, a lot of good stuff from that. So yeah, big ups to Jay, fucking great guy. So, now that my accolades are done, now that we're 8 minutes in of me blowing smoke, I decided I have a ton of new stuff that I really need to digest properly before I feel I can talk about it a little bit more. I got that tape order from Caligari and some other stuff. I got a huge pile of stuff from Jason via Wayne of Decrepitaph and Father Befouled. That's a lot of grind on 7-inch and CD that, other than the 3 that I talked about, I haven't really delved into much yet, so gonna let that simmer. I wanted to do another Subgenre Wars. Now, if you caught my first one, which was Stoner Rock versus Motorhead Worship, the concept of this is me being a really detail-oriented kind of music nerd, 2 very specific subgenres, or maybe not even technically subgenres, but very specific sounds within the realm of abrasive, heavy, fast rock and roll, metal, punk, whatever. One of which that I can't get enough of. I can listen to stuff like that all day, even the bands that probably most people would consider also-rans are not that great, and pit it against a subgenre that maybe I don't hate. Specifically in this case, I do not hate the one that I'm going to talk about, but don't hate, but I'm very picky about, or maybe just ignorant about, or just kind of haven't dove into much yet. Just there's certain things about it that make me super selective and picky about it. So today's episode of Subgenre Wars will be real specific here: late 80s New York hardcore versus DBEAT. Much more broad with just saying DBEAT, because there's a ton of different types of styles within that, but I'm no Eric Bauer. I don't know a ton about DBEAT. I definitely have enough records that fall in that realm, but I want to talk about the ones that I like the most and why. And as a new added component to this whole thing, I will find one record that bridged the gap. Now, the Stoner Rock and Motorhead Worship one, somebody commented, and I'm sorry I can't remember who off the top of my head, somebody commented, hey, High on Fire kinda marries the two. Well, I found one for these two. So let's start with the one that I'm truly in love with first, and then we'll move on to DBEAT. And I'm going to talk about good old NYHC. And for me specifically, I could talk about NYHC all fucking day. New York hardcore, I mean, there's so many great periods of it, going from the late 70s up until current day. I mean, it's tough to exclude the early 80s because there were some great bands like Antidote, you know, Urban Waste, the Nihilistics, the list goes on. Of course, AF started back then, there was Cause for Alarm, and all those bands did have a specific New York identity, but I feel like in the late 80s, New York hardcore became almost, well, its own genre, as we'll explore, because it absorbed different stuff from metal than, like, the crossover movement that came previously, I feel. Like, it took the very chunky low end, the brutality of metal, specifically, like, the E-chord chug break in Raining Blood by Slayer, and it infused it, you know, it was the same range of influences that were part of the New York culture that spawned hip-hop, and you can hear it in the music. It's not like it was, you know, some terrible rap-rock hybrid, but there was something more syncopated in the rhythm, I feel. I don't even know if there's any really good examples of that in my pile, but that's part of it. I think at least on one or two records there are. So let's get down to business. I think the best one for me to start with would probably be this re-release of the Breakdown 87 demo. This came out on Painkiller Records, I think last year or the year before. At the very beginning of the late 80s, I guess, because it's 87, but I mean, guys from this band went on to form Raw Deal, who turned into Killing Time, who were very influential in creating a super gritty, tight, I've used the term muscly a lot because I can't think of any other way to put it. Herculean, tough, you know, just very, very heavy spawn of hardcore, spin-off of hardcore. As far as the product contained herein, this is the back. I'm not sure if this was used on the actual demo, but this has been on many, many re-release versions of it. Got a nice insert with some flyers. Good history of the band, good history of the demo. The music is fucking great. It does have its share of fast, traditional hardcore rhythms in it, but I mean, the first song on it, Sick People, I almost said Kickback, which is the second song on it. Sick People, the rhythm of it is very much like the template for what would come later with bands like Madball, Biohazard. This sort of like almost hip-hop kind of rhythm, like it was not like a 4/4 beat, it was almost, I don't know, what you would maybe jazzy in nature, I don't know. But like I said, kind of syncopated, kind of funky actually. No slap bass or anything like that. These are the labels. It's black, this came out on Painkiller. The other side of this re-release has a great live set from WNYU in 1987. Lots and lots of great legendary hardcore bands recorded radio sets there over the years. So, and this band continued on after some of the founding members left. Put out a lot of great stuff. I think they still exist in one form or another, but they did like 3, I want to say, full lengths. All of varying quality, but most of them pretty damn good. Still, you got to go with the 87 demo to start. And it is fucking great. Super heavy, super tough. And I would go on next to probably talk about this. Now, my weird double dipping rule that I break all the time. I already talked about Sheer Terror's first full length, Just Can't Hate Enough. My 25 records that got me into hardcore punk. So I'm just going to move on to Thanks for Nothing. This is their second record. This one, they kind of got a little bit tighter, molded their sound a little bit more. Kind of, I mean, it's still there somewhat, but they really had like a Celtic Frost worshipping guitar tone on the first one. And I don't think that guitarist is playing on this, Alan Blake. This doesn't have an inner. I should know that, but hey man, whatever. Don't remember off the top of my head right now. Pretty sure Alan Blake isn't on this, but correct me if I'm wrong, people. Alan Blake did go on to be in Dark Side NYHC, so I think this had a couple of different covers over the years. I like this. It's like this Bouquet of Roses, kind of weird, psychedelic. On Blackout, who put out pretty much all of Sheer Terror's early stuff early on. It's just on black vinyl. Trying to be better about it. This like, hey, this is what label this is fucking actually on. Those are the labels. Nothing too interesting. Yeah, they really gelled on this. I mean, I like the raw intensity and the Hellhammer vibe of the first one. Which one I like better out of the first two full lengths? This is technically a third, and I'll get into that in a second. It depends on my mood on whatever day it is. This has better production, a little bit more of a groove to it. It's not quite as pummeling. And I mean, Paul Bearer's lyrics on this really take the cake as far as just being poetic, expressing loss, expressing regret. And those they're like roaring, hard vocals, but there's a little bit of an undertone of like almost like a Danzig Elvis kind of thing. And like I mentioned on the first album, when he does occasionally actually just sing, it's beautiful. He's really great. I'm gonna need to grab their other CD, so hold that thought. Alright, I'm back. So, this is technically the second Sheer Terror full length. I don't know if this ever made it to vinyl. If it did, I believe it was a bootleg. I've heard that bootlegs exist. I've never seen one. And it's called Ugly and Proud. It's most of the same songs. This does have more of the frosty guitar tone on it. This is great. I mean, how iconic is that shit? Bulldog, you know, tattoos, a fucking spider web coming out of an iron cross. So ill. What happened was this release, this is on something called Magnetic Air. I believe it was on another label called Maze, who put out the first Biohazard record, and basically Maze fucked over Sheer Terror. So Sheer Terror just decided they were going to fuck over their label back and re-record almost everything, the songs they wanted to keep. I think there's a handful of songs that aren't on there. Young Punks in Love is one of them. Sin of Pride's another. There's one more, whatever. I like them both. This is definitely better produced, better sounding. It's a little bit more raw and it's closer to the old Celtic Frost guitar tone, but yeah, classic, you know, just enough metal to get the Heshers in the pit to get beat up. Fucking awesome NYHC, just hard as nails, but not without lyrical depth by any means. And yeah, it looks like now that my memory banks are starting to spark a little bit. Newman is the guy who plays guitar on this, so he must play guitar on this as well. He was the bassist and then took over after Alan Blake left. So there's your history lesson. Or you can just buy the NYHC book. Alright, so kind of going along the same lines of like negative, dark New York hardcore. I just bought this yesterday. I owned a repress of it with a different cover that I didn't like at all, from some European label. It's back in the stacks. I was thinking of pulling it to show you guys, but fuck it. This is SFA. Still don't know what SFA stands for. I heard from elder statesmen in the hardcore scene from my town that it stood for Society Full of Assholes. I've never had that confirmed. But this was an interesting time for New York hardcore. If you know your stuff, if you've read the books and read interviews and everything, things were getting kind of violent at CBGB's, apparently. They closed their doors to the Sunday matinees for a while. Hilly Crystal did. And a lot of the more or less scary, gang-oriented, kind of weaker, more like punk rock kind of kids started up a space called ABC No Rio that was in Alphabet City. That last time I checked, it got moved or something. I mean, that neighborhood priced it out fucking 10 years ago, but not sure what the status is of it right now. Anyway, SFA, Citizens Arrest, Rorschach, Bug Out Society, all these other bands kind of started their own scene as an alternative to the scarier kind of metallic stomp, you know, sort of skin violent straight edge kid or whatever. Nah, there weren't really violent straight edge kids back then, but whatever. The kind of more testosterone fueled scene that was supposed to be more positive, I guess. SFA kind of fell under that. They were really good, and I think they had a falling out with ABC No Rio sooner than later, for one reason or another. Again, going by shit I've read, whatever. Drama and scene bullshit aside, this is some fucking awesome, perfect New York hardcore. It's very punk. You know, it doesn't betray the hardcore punk roots. There is a little bit more of like a metal guitar tone to it, and the breakdowns and slow parts here and there are very. There's a few songs that are very rhythmic and very like, you know, stereotypically late '80s New York hardcore. But there's a lot of Black Flag in there. Just like pure fucking rage. Great deep shouted vocals courtesy of Brendan Rafferty, who is a legendary figure in those times. He was a bouncer at CB's. You can see him in the last Gigi Allen video, before Gigi dies, where they play the abandoned gas station. He's wearing short shorts. He was just an interesting guy, because he gives a shout out to the Socialist Workers Party. I believe on this record, it might be the second one. But he was also a cop at one point. So, very interesting guy. There's also a answering machine message that is like some white Aryan skinhead dude from Chicago with a really thick Chicago accent threatening to kill them in this, because he didn't take any shit. He was a pretty tough dude. He's also all over some of those Donahue episodes that had all the New York hardcore guys. I think there was one where he's talking about Sharp, Skinheads Against Racial Prejudice and stuff. So yeah, very important figure, and I don't understand why this band isn't heralded more. Just the song Gyroscope alone is one of my top 10. You know, struggling to get through life, struggling to get through the workday, trying to keep my cool, you know, fucking anthems. Just so good. Yeah, very, very angst-ridden and pissed. You know, none of this, oh, this guy that used to be my friend isn't my friend anymore. You know, it's like, more like fuck all friends, fuck everything. It's New York hatecore, and in the best way possible. Super nihilistic and cool. So, there's that. Gotta quit smoking one of these days. Then we got another band that kind of was part of that ABC scene, Yuppicide. This was the first hardcore show I ever attended. Was seeing this band with... Ugh, I'm so fuzzy on this shit now. I believe a band called Encounter from Rochester. A band called Flag Camp was supposed to play but canceled. That's pretty much all of that I've retained at the moment. But I'll never forget these guys, because their singer came out wearing a weird elephant mask, shirtless, covered in tattoos, back at a time, early 1992, my first show. Back at a time where I hadn't seen anybody with tattoos, really, except for my dad, who had a tiny little tattoo right here. Covered in tattoos, wearing a kilt. Came out with 2 super soakers spraying the audience. Totally wild. Super, super fun. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the pressing information on that SFA record. I don't think anybody's heard of it. It's on DeMilo Records. It's been repressed a bunch of weird times, and it doesn't really have much for an insert, so I'm just going to let my old man forgetfulness just take over there. But since I'm remembering here, it's the Yuppicide record. Cool center label there, huh? Evacuate Records. I just like... They were art students. I mean, I'm sure they hung out in scary environments and stuff, but... And I don't know which guy from the band that's done all the artwork. But at least early on, it was very, very, very cool. Here's the inside for you. I just love that fork and knife over the money symbol. Like, okay. And this is just great. Subway, crazy businessman guy. Like, the music's definitely wild. Like, there's certainly a strong, like, Age of Quarrel, Cro-Mags influence. The singer happens to be British, though. And there is, like, a little bit more fun, like, punk rock in the music. Like, a little bit more of, like, almost like a pogo kind of vibe to it. I don't know if I'm just reading into that because the guy has a British accent or not. like, there's a sarcastic song on it called Be a Man and Slam that's kind of making fun of the whole machismo thing. But real catchy, good, like, loud bass and great bass lines. I can even hum for you the one for Fistful of Credit Cards. It's a great song. Fucking awesome. Their full length that came after it, Fear Love, is great. And they did another one called Shinebox that opens up with a sample from Goodfellas. And that record is dark as fuck. They definitely lost the humor, and it's also really, really awesome. But yeah, Yuppicide on Evacuate. We got Alone in the Crowd. This was kind of a super group of sorts. And I can't even remember all the members and what bands they were in. I know for sure it was Jules from Side by Side, and Lars from Uppercut, guitarist from Uppercut, and who also played in like the later Judge lineup towards the end. Beyond that, I'm not sure. And I'm not really gonna read this and try to figure it out in the meantime. But here's the insert. This is just some of the most well-written fucking hardcore. I mean, Side by Side are no slouch either. I really like them. I'm gonna save them for another episode because I want to talk about Youth Crew in another one. But this is just tight as fuck. Super anthemic. When Tigers Fight is just one of those dragged out, like mid-paced, like just screaming, like, you know, I'm not gonna take your shit anymore. Let's fucking throw down, kind of thing. But it doesn't come off as being a tough guy. I'm gonna kick your ass. It's like I've been fed up and you're a fucking bully kind of song. Center labels are fucking cool. This is a repress. I don't know how much an original of this goes for. Way out of my price range, I'm sure. It's on Contrast Records, which is a Providence, Rhode Island label. I do not know when that came out, but that is fucking ill. But yeah, just every song is unique from the other. Super, super great New York hardcore. I think this might have gotten repressed with a live set that's just the songs, the same songs. It's 4 songs, and they do Teenager in a Box by Government Issue and fucking kill it. So yeah, check that out. I know that live set's probably up on YouTube somewhere. But yeah, just vocals are like kind of like Ray of Today, but less squawky, which is one of the things that always turned me off about that band. Just super to the point. Great choruses that snag you. Just having you jumping out of your BVDs in no time. Which is what I feel like fucking doing. It's getting hot down there. Alright, now, to bridge the gap between NYHC and DBEAT, we have Sacrilege here. Not Sacrilege from the UK, nor is it Sacrilege BC, from the West Coast somewhere. This is the band that predated Nausea. This is a re-release on Radio Raheem, who are awesome, and War Dance, who are also awesome for just releasing cool stuff. Radio Raheem has released some excellent stuff. This band, I'm not sure about the finite details of the members. I know a couple of the guys went on to Nausea, had an ex-agnostic front member, but, I mean, that band in the early days had a personnel changes like you wouldn't believe. So, I'm not sure, but it is very, very early, the very beginning of, like, the kind of when New York punk and hardcore kind of separated, I suppose. Probably the beginning of, like, all that Squatter Rot stuff. You know, the scene that guys from, like, Distraught came from, and Disassociate, and all that stuff that came out of New York in the 90s. This came out, it's actually it's 1985, so I guess I'm cheating a little bit. It's not late 80s NYHC, but you can definitely say that Nausea is. But this is a super raw vinyl pressing of 2 demos. A Don Fury demo, legendary New York hardcore producer there. And the side A, the Don Fury demo, is very raw, stripped down, pretty much DB, Discharge-inspired kind of stuff. They get a little bit more like metal in a cool way on side B. It almost sounds like they've been listening to early Sodom and Venom. I know that one of the members, I believe he was one of the guys that went on to Nausea, but don't quote me, was known as Victor Venom because he had a Venom back patch and he was like a crust punk. I was a crust punk that had a Venom back patch. How about that? Long time ago. But yeah, cool inserts. What I like about these hardcore re-releases from Radio Raheem and Painkiller and stuff is they don't completely kill you with like tons and tons of stuff. It's just a nice fold-out insert. This little card thing with the lyrics that I dropped on the floor. Super cool, cool band, interesting artifact. A little bit of a rough listen. But you know, if you're into noisy DBeat, you should be used to that kind of thing. All right, on to the Discharge version. So, I'm going to start with, this was an early one for me, Disgust, Brutality of War. I discovered this around the same time I discovered Disrupt. I was hoping very much it would sound like Disrupt, and it does in some ways, but it has that Discharge-inspired repetitiveness to it, and at the time, when I was about 15, I think, I did not get it. I thought it was boring. I thought, why aren't they changing it up and playing different parts? Like, do they not have the talent to do that? Yeah, it was kind of, you know. At that point, I hadn't heard much Discharge at all, I don't think. I think I'd only heard the Anthrax cover of Protest and Survive, so I wasn't into Discharge. Kind of blew past me. Going back on it, this is a fucking ferocious record. I think I went back to it at some point in my 20s and never looked back. I'm not sure. Oh, Dean Jones is definitely a ENT member. There might be one or two of these other guys from Extreme Noise Terror, but yeah, it's basically just a heavy, almost death metal-ish take on Discharge. This came out on Earache. It is good. They have some other records that are also very good, but this is really their best one. Brutality of War. Must have come out in, I don't know, 93 or something like that. Great DB. Fucking totally crushing. Another one, Genocide SS. Genocide Superstars, as they were later called. I'm not sure if they were going by this yet. This had Miesco from Nazem, who very sadly passed away in that tsunami that went through Southeast Asia, which sucks that we'll never get anything else from these guys. Fucking awesome DB. It's a little bit more Motorhead inspired, a little bit more hooky there, here and there. It's not straight mono tempo kind of stuff. There's like some more variation there. Great choruses. Very blown out still, though. I revisited this a couple of months ago, and it is definitely maxed out, you know? Like, it's definitely volume warred, brick-walled, distorted on purpose kind of thing. But fucking great. Crazy Motorcycle. Can't fuck with a song like that. We Were Born of Hate, Fuck the Enemy. Just real punch in the face, catchy, a lot more kind of fast, spitty vocals than a lot of DB bands. What else have we got? Oh, Local Boys. Jason Hook mentioned these guys briefly on his last update, and again, members. Some of these guys were in a band called Male Nurses. After this, some of these guys went on to be in Savage Heads, who are an awesome kind of partisan sounding band, and some of them were also in 2x4, all Boston bands. They seem to do these projects for a while and then get bored with it and do something a little different. This was their DB band, but man, I mean, this is better than so many fucking bands that play this style. Oh, Relapse, that's what that's on. So this came out on Total Fucker Records. It's completely blank, 45. Side A is stamped on there. There's not even a side B stamped on there. Super utilitarian. Lyrics on the back. Little, you know, little slip cover. Very cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how to describe this other than really fucking good, really fucking catchy DB. Have some slower, not slower, but more mid-pace kind of pounding songs here and there. Endless Fields of Rotting Sax is definitely like a do the crusty wave when you've had one too many OEs at the basement show kind of jam. Super good. And I mean, come on. What am I, a dick? I'm not gonna talk about this. Don't answer that. But, yeah, Discharge. Hear nothing, see nothing, say nothing. You know, what can you say? Like, they invented the whole genre. Subgenre. This is an original, not sure what pressing. It came out on clay. Got the Made in Britain right there. Got the boys on the back doing their thing. It's a gatefold. I always liked the lettuce head guy a lot. He's a good dude. We used to hang out back in the day. This is just on black vinyl. Got the iconic bayonet through the dove there. Just the clay. Nuclear stockpiles on the back, on the other label. Yeah, I mean, they invented all this stuff. I prefer the more mid-paced, like, pounding, driving kind of Discharge tracks myself. Free Speech for the Dumb. It's not on here, but Ain't No Feeble Bastard is one of my favorite songs. Like, almost like Discharge's take on Oi, sort of. Man, I mean, Protest and Survive, like, is probably their most well-known song for a reason. You know, just fist in the air. The simplicity of the repetition of their lyrics, I don't think anybody really captured it that was imitating them as well as them. Super good. Not my favorite. That is my favorite, but just a special shout out to the first Discharge record I ever bought. This is Discharge Live, The Nightmare Continues. As you can see here, Oliver's Records. Brought them up before. Little record store in my hometown. Some dude dropped his collection. You know, I got all these for a song, which was all I could afford in those days anyway, but $4.98. I was looking at my Jerry's Kids record because of the episode with Jason, and I got that for $3. Got a lot of good stuff, but yeah, this has a lot of... This is a pretty good sounding record, recording-wise, actually, and I don't even think it goes for that much. I could be totally wrong, but if you like Discharge and you'd like to hear a live record that sounds good, check it out. Finally, one more DBEAT. And this is like a band that's really popular with people that know their stuff, DBEAT, and it's super noisy and abrasive, which my ears are getting more attuned to kind of stuff like that as the years go on, which is weird. It's usually the opposite. But this is, underneath all the fuzz and distort, there's some really, really great catchy riffing, as simplistic as it may be. I saw these guys at the very last Chaos in Tejas a few times, and they brought the fucking house down. I'll put a link, or whatever, if you happen to remember it. YouTube search FRAMTID Mohawk Austin, and it's the craziest fucking set I've seen. Just like people falling out of the fucking sky. Because I think it was like 2 levels where you could look down on the band. It was like an open air venue, and people were diving off of all kinds of shit. But yeah, just blown out, fucking crushing craziness. From Japan, this came out on Crust War, La Vida es un mus discos, ugh, and Blackwater. Just black vinyl. Simple labels. Really, really fucking great. Insert there. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of bands like this, you know. A lot of people are into Disclose. I have some of their stuff. It's cool. I feel like I would be more in the mood for it now. I gave some of that stuff a shot a few years ago and was just kind of like, eh, not for me. But for whatever reason, FRAMTID was the one where I was like, that band's fucking sick. I'm going to listen to that record again. So, yeah, Discharge-inspired, repetitive, deep-eating, Japanese, fucking flesh-rending insanity. And that's it. This is run super long. If you made it through this, fucking congratulations. I'm probably gonna make another one soon. But yeah, gonna do that tape thing. Might do a random record thing because I want to talk about some of my older items too. But yeah, before I completely take up all your time, thanks for watching, especially if you sat through all this. And thanks for subbing. And thanks to all the dudes I mentioned. It's been awesome fucking meeting you guys. Later.